folks, it's time for another edition of the World Edition. And of course, I've got some great guests with me as well. And who knows, there may even be another guest that'll be coming in that is not one of our regular folks and all in that kind of way. But we're going to see if Miss Stephanie, I believe is her name, that is written a book, decides to pop on in and share some of her wisdom as we are in the middle of February. And a lot of things go on in February, according, of course, Black History Month, but it is also the month of love. That's right. Valentine's Day is around the corner, and that is part of what she writes about and all in that space. So we're going to see if she manages to come on here and shares some of her wisdom as well. But definitely there is some items going on around the world. And of course, we're going to get to other items as well. But definitely we do know that President Biden will be giving his State of the Union address very shortly and all of that. And we're going to see what his perception is of how the United States is doing and how things are going around the world. And apparently, Arkansas Governor Sarah Sanders will be delivering the GOP response to Biden's address. And it looks like Progressive Representative Delia Ramirez is set to give a State of the Union response as well. So there might be responses coming from different parts of the aisle and all in that kind of way. And of course, we do know that there were some fiery speeches that were given after Representative Ilhan Omar was ousted from the Foreign Affairs Committee. And definitely there are a lot of folks that are up in arms about that, other folks that are glad about that particular situation and all in that way. I do know that AOC exploded over a vote to boot Omar from that particular committee and slapped the notebook against the podium saying that the Congress was targeting women of color. And apparently there was a very fiery speech that Ilhan gave as well. And on the other side of the aisle, Carrie Lake is meeting with top Republicans as she is mulling the idea of conceding in Arizona. So that is something that is going on the Republican side, and we'll see what happens in that regards as well. And then we did see that there is a suspected spy balloon drifting over the U.S. China is saying that that spy balloon is actually a civilian airship. And we'll find out what is going on in that space. And maybe even Lee and others have things to say about that. I do know that there was a group of rappers that had been missing for a while over there in Detroit. And they were found in a rat-infested vacant apartment building after they had canceled their performance there in Detroit. So I do know that a lot of folks in the music community had been concerned as to what was going on there. And there may still be some ideas as to whether that was a targeted attack or whether that was them being in the wrong place at the wrong time or exactly what happened in that kind of way. And we've also got the Alex Mardal trial going on. And apparently there's like a whole lot of money missing in that particular trial. I see in one figure that is talking about a missing $792,000 in law firm fees. Wonder if Nick got any of that, since we sometimes tease him about being a lawyer and all in that space. And there was a New Jersey councilman, and we'll see if Lee knows anything about this particular case as well, Eunice DeWampfor, that was shot and killed and all in that way. And that was in Sayreville, New Jersey. So like I said, I'm sure that that was in the news items there, and definitely we'll find out more about that. And of course, we're interested in finding out from Sasha how things are going there in the war in Ukraine. And last things that I'll bring up before I bring up our folks, our panel and everything, is that George Santos has admitted to lying in everyone in leaked audio. And definitely there's a lot of folks that are not surprised by that. Other folks may be surprised at that as well. And if you're wondering about that lovely groundhog prediction, you know, that is usually another tradition in February. Apparently, Phil did see his shadow, and that means that longer winter will be lasting. It's been actually a mild winter here in North Carolina so far, so it's going to be a longer but milder one. Maybe we don't care in that regards. But in Staten Island, apparently it was maybe the opposite prediction and in that kind of way. But we'll see whether folks even believe in these kind of things as I bring in our folks and all in that kind of way. And definitely we're going to see what folks have got to say in that regards. And Stephanie Bailey is here. So I'm looking forward to bringing Stephanie Bailey on. As a matter of fact, I think I'll bring her on first, and then I'll bring on my panel as well. So definitely glad to have Stephanie Bailey with us. Stephanie Bailey has got a company called Miss Adventures LLC. She's actually said that there are a variety of types of men out there. And of course, she's got things going on with her book and with some of the other things that she's doing. And of course, we are about a week and a half away from Valentine's Day and all in that space. So before I bring in my other panelists, and they may have some questions for you as well, share a little bit about your insights into the holidays and all of that. And even if you got some insights into Black History Month as well, since it is that part of the holidays as well going on. But love to hear some of your insights, Miss Bailey, on both of those. And then, like I said, we may bring in some other folks, but a lot of folks will be interested to know what you've got going on and even these different types. I mean, I think it's like 99, going like it's a lot of different types of men out there and everything.
I do. I have a book called 99 Types of Guys. It made #1 bestseller on Amazon. And just a little tidbit about Black History Month. My biggest input is I don't know why we have the shortest month of the year, but that's all I've got to say about that. I feel like it should be much longer than the February date, personally. But anyway, so yeah, Valentine's Day is right around the corner. I wrote the book because I know what it's like to be out there searching for love and dating and having a hard time with that. I found my partner 5 years ago and I'm 52. And so I coach women. I'm a self-love dating coach and expert, and I coach women on, not having those timelines for yourself and not having those long lists, because those long lists really blocks you from love in your life. And I created this book, 99 Types of Guys, so that anybody out there who's either dating men or who wants to reminisce about their past dating experiences, maybe you're in a relationship and you want to know what type of man you are dating or in a relationship with, or maybe you're just a man who wants to know what type of guy you fit into, or maybe you just want to laugh. That's why I created the book. It's a fun, sassy, fun book out there, but pretty much spot on about the types of men that are out there to date, so that women kind of have this manual to go back to, so that if they are ghosted, they can look back and be like, okay, it wasn't me. Because a lot of times, we can go back and think it's us, and really it's just not the right fit. That's the main thing, is, walking away knowing that you can empower yourself.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, I'm going to bring in the other guests. And of course, we've got other news items as well. But one of the things I was curious about is you did mention that you started later in life. I've actually hit the big age of 60 last year. So 61 will be coming up in July, still in that single space, even though there are folks that could be moving that away from that kind of frame and all in that way. But I was just wondering, a lot of times as folks get older, they get settled in their ways. And sometimes it doesn't seem as if that partnership is going to happen. But you said that you found your significant other 5 years ago, so that would have put you like in your mid 40s and everything. Mm-hmm. So is it too late for those that are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s that haven't, quote unquote, found love yet and all in that space?
No, my partner, he's in his 50s, so I'd say absolutely no, it's not too late. I just feel if you put yourself out there, I mean, I have friends that are been divorced, newly divorced, getting divorced, that type of thing. They're around my age. So no, I don't think it's too late to find someone to love and to be in a healthy, loving relationship. Sometimes we start off, I've never been married, so sometimes we start off with the wrong person. And then we realize that's not the right person, and we see ourselves getting divorced later on in life, especially if we got married early. So again, it's just being hopeful and just knowing your person is out there.
No, that makes sense. And I know that sometimes people set standards that might not be all that realistic, because I know that sometimes people get caught up in the materialism idea and some of the things that they want, whether that's the person with the right car, the right job, the right whatever, and everything. So I just wondering your thoughts around that, because I do think that sometimes people rule themselves out. I know that even on some of these shows, we talked about people that might rule out blue collar workers because they are in the white collar space and all in that way. But I'm just wondering your take on that.
My take on that is, like I said, get rid of the list. I mean, My partner, when I had my list when I was much younger and I forgot about it, I was writing out all these things that I wanted, and it was blocking me from love. And I tell anybody out there, your five non-negotiables, the five things that you need in a relationship, has nothing to do with what your partner looks like or the financial status. Because if we say we want somebody who makes six figures, I'm going to tell you right now, you're cutting yourself super short in finding the love of your life, because you can find somebody who makes under six figures, is really great at saving, and can still provide a great life with you together. When people are trying to look for somebody to take care of them because of the Disney movies that tell women like, oh, you need to find that prince, that's just BS to me. It's like you're looking for the wrong person. You're not looking for love that's going to last. So what are your five non-negotiables? And one of mine is that, they have to be spiritual. They have to believe in God and Christ in a spiritual way, or believe in the universe. I can't be with somebody who's an atheist or doesn't have a belief in a higher power. So that's one of my five non-negotiables. And, having that communication and that trust and respectful communication is another one. So that's just giving two of one of my, out of my five. So I always tell women I'm a self-love coach and expert. So when I tell women, like, what are your five non-negotiables? They'll start to talk about, well, I want him to look like, I'm like, it's nothing to do with what somebody looks like, because your perfect partner could be shorter than you. Your perfect partner could be taller than you. You don't know what God's going to bring you. So to be
Well,
open-minded.
no, that makes a lot of sense. Before I bring in my other guests and we get to some of the other issues of the world and everything, and of course, they may have some questions for you as well, including who these 99 types are. Maybe we can't get into all 99 of them are
Yeah.
and all in that space, but definitely one of the things I was curious about is the pandemic did raise a lot of people to open their eyes to different kinds of love and different kinds of relationship. I saw a number of online relationships, some long distance relationships that flourished because sometimes we were stuck in whatever state or whatever country we were in, but you might have found, say you were in England, you might have found your love in Nigeria, or say you were in actually a war-torn area like Ukraine. You might have found your love in some place like New Zealand or something like that. So I'm just wondering how much has the dating lanes changed during this last 2.5, 3 years of the pandemic?
I would say I have found that there's a lot more single people out there too. You think about it, when you are confined to be with somebody and that maybe you're not with that long of a period of time, such as, your significant other works a lot or travels a lot, and all of a sudden you are confined to being at home and it's mandated. You get to know a lot about your partner, we get to know a lot about your partner. And there is a lot of relationships that I know that did not survive. And then there's relationships that were struggling that actually got better during COVID. So it was kind of a toss of the coin, about what relationships or what happened with relationships. But yeah, I found a lot of relationships did not survive the pandemic
Yeah, that
because
makes
they
a
realized the person was not their person.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to bring in Lee Newton Rhodes, and he's definitely with us and everything. Going to bring in Dan Worthington, who I saw nodding his
Good
head
morning.
big time when you mentioned the spirituality aspect and all in that kind of way. And of course, I'll bring in also Sasha Starr, who's up there in Canada and all in that kind of space as well.
Okay.
So you see that there's 4 different kinds of guys and everything. You're here as the soul lady this time around and everything. But what are these 99 types? And maybe not go into all of them, but do you see any of those 99 types in the image of the gentleman that you see here and everything? You haven't heard either of them speak and all of that, or maybe I'm one of the 99. I'm definitely one of the 99. Definitely all in that space. But if you can maybe give some sense of some of the types without going into all 99.
I mean, some of the tests I can't say, for sure with all these gentlemen here, because I haven't spoken to any of them yet. But one of the types of guys I have in there is called gaslighter. We know what that is. It's when the guy is, or even women. I mean, this book is honestly, women can find themselves in this book as well. But a gaslighter is when somebody is trying to, what you're saying is like trying to not over talk, but even overtake over what you're saying and making you feel less than in more of an aggressive way. And so my tip, because I leave funny, sarcastic tips, is know where your fire extinguisher is, know where your exit signs are, and run versus walk. So I try to keep it lighthearted. It's not a male bashing book at all. My mom, who is 81, when my dad passed away at 53, she was in her 40s. She never remarried, never dated, nothing. So she's not my target audience for my book. And she said she laughed and giggled. She's like, this is a really great book. She's like, it's informative, but it also makes me realize, like, I'm glad I'm not out there dating, but at the same time, you did mention some really great guys in your book. So it encompasses a bunch, and that was my main focus was if you're picking this up because you hate men, then put it back down, because that's not what it's about.
Yeah, definitely makes a
Okay,
good
Mark,
sense.
can
Lee,
I add something? Yeah, I
Yes.
do. Good morning, Stephanie. Contrary to what Mark is saying, don't listen to him. This is not the dating game. You don't have to choose one of the three of us. But one of the problems in America we're having today is with children having, fatherless homes. Is there something men and women are doing wrong in terms of relationships?
I honestly feel that they go in and they're not going in with an open heart. And if you go in, what we were talking about is if you go in this list, it's not going to work out. It's like, that's blocking ourselves from what we really want. But if we go in with our 5 non-negotiables, then yeah, that's a completely different thing, because then we're saying, yes, this guy treats me really well. And I don't know if any of you've ever watched, Sex and the City, but Harry was my favorite character for Charlotte, and she almost wasn't going to be with him because he was bald and he was hairy. But then the way he treated her with everything that she wanted. My dad was bald, by the way. And he was an amazing man. But that's what I'm saying. It's about how somebody treats you at the end of the day. And women tend to forget that. It's like they look at oh, what does he drive? Where does he live? I'm like, none of that matters. What matters is, how is he treating you? Because you can have the car, you can have the man that's going to shower with you with money. And then guess what you're also going to have? You're going to have somebody who's controlling most of the time. You're going to have somebody that has all these high expectations from you, and you're not going to be living your authentic self. So I always say, don't fall for that. You need to fall for the connection.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to Lee's point, and I'd love to hear if other folks got other thoughts before we get to some of the other news items, and definitely want to hear from Sasha how things are going there in the war in Ukraine. But I do know that sometimes there are a lot of single women that have kids, and you said that you found your other half recently and everything, and I don't know, because you mentioned a past relationship whether there were kids involved, but I do know that there are folks that have kids and grandkids, and that can also be a factor, because not everybody is willing to accept the responsibility of somebody else's child, even though that is actually, I think, a noble act, but not everybody is willing to do that.
Not even their own sometimes too. Mark, not even their own sometimes too. Some fathers they're not there for their own kids.
No, yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. Very sad.
I just wondered, from a dating standpoint, is that something that was a concern of yours, if you have any children, the folks that needed to understand the nature of the kids in the relationship? Because like you said, you're a relationship coach as well, and I do know that some people bring the kids right into the relationship. Other people want to make sure that they love the person and that they know the person before they bring the kids into it and everything. That's actually something that, as a single person, I've even told friends of mine, is that I want to make sure that I actually like the woman before I'm ready to meet the kids, because the kids are, if there's no relationship, there's no reason to bring the kids into the relationship and all in that space.
Oh, 100%. I agree. So I don't have kids personally. My partner has 2 boys. His son has been living with us. He's 16 for over 3 years. His other son lives with his mother up in the mountains, because that's where she ended up moving. But yeah, so we have, this weekend, we have both boys. So I'm a stepmom to them. I've embraced them very well. I have dated men with kids that, it was hard because I didn't feel like they really wanted to parent. And for me, that was something that was hard to respect, somebody who, lets their kids talk disrespectfully to them, because I did not grow up that way. And so if I, dated somebody and their kids are talking disrespectfully, it makes me say, okay, what are you doing here? Why aren't you parenting? Why aren't you checking your children? Why aren't you grounding them? To me, regardless if you're a man or a woman, when you have children, you're there to parent and guide. And, luckily I'm with a partner who is a very great parent, and we partnership together with that. So parenting, having kids doesn't stop anything. My sister, when she got divorced, she thought that she wasn't going to find somebody because she had children. and she ended up getting into a relationship with somebody, and he also has children.
Yeah, some of that Brady Bunch activity that goes on. I've
Yeah.
had some friends that have done that as well, those blended families. And that does seem to be something that is more common these days around the world, is the blended families and all in that kind of space. So what are some of the
Yeah.
advice that you give to people that are doing that blended family? I know that, like I said, I don't have any kids of my own, but my brother has two, and I know that his fiance has two as well. So they are all older. My nephews are 13 and 14, and one of the future folks in that blended family, well, my brother's fiance's kids, one is in college, the other is in high school. Yeah, I believe Jack's in high school, if I remember correctly, and all in that nature. So there are various ages, everything from 13 on up to, I think, 19 or 20 is what Effie is. But what are your suggestions for those that are in those blended relationships?
I would say partnership is really important. So when you're talking about something, we're dealing with a teenager that I've been dealing with since he was 12, right before he turned 13. And it's really having those conversations and being partners together and saying, okay, this is what we're going to say to him together, and being on the same page. Because if you're not, and you're trying to discipline and your partner thinks differently, it doesn't work out, because then the child knows that they can play both sides. You have to be a united front when it comes to children. And also you need to not be afraid to parent, because if you're afraid to parent, that child's not going to respect you. So as I've told, Bruno, who's my stepson, there's a time that he was like, he got mad at me. He's like, "You're not my mom." And I was literally like, "What?" And I was like, "Here's the thing. I'm not trying to be your mom. I'm trying to be someone that loves you, because kids cannot get enough love." And I said, "I'm Switzerland, and I'm not afraid to parent you, because in a divorced family, a lot of times, dad wants to be fun dad and mom wants to be fun mom, and nobody really wants to parent because they don't want to look like the bad person." Well, for me, that's not how I grew up. My parents were not divorced. And so I come from a background of, it's important to discipline so that children know that you care, and like, there's times where you let things go, but there's times where you have to, put your foot down and say, that's not okay. And this is why, or this is why I'm grounding you. So then they understand.
That makes a lot of
It's
sense.
interesting you said that you sometimes let things go. I heard one time in parenting, you don't have to notice everything a kid does.
Right.
You can just, right. You don't have to comment on everything and micromanage. I'm sorry,
There's
Mike.
a lot of micromanaging in parenting, just like there is in business and everything. And speaking of micromanaging, one of the things that gets maybe a little bit overly micromanaged is Valentine's Day itself. And like I said, that is not this coming week, but the following week. And I know a lot of folks are feeling the pressures to get a gift, get a card, and it might even be in the early stages of the relationship. But definitely that is something that people feel pressured to get, is that significant gift, no matter what the state of the relationship is, or how
Mark?
new or old the relationship is. So I just wondered,
Yeah.
Stephanie, and I'd love to hear from you, Lee, and anybody else.
Just one quick comment.
The Valentine's Day and
the holiday, is it not called St. Valentine's Day? Is it not a religious holiday?
That's a good
As opposed to a secular American holiday?
Well,
technically, yes. Like there's yes. However, people have made it a Hallmark day, and really, I think the Hallmark day.
I understand that, but does that take away from it? Just like Christmas, commercializing Christmas as a religious holiday.
Well, yeah. Well, Christmas. I mean, the born of Christ is really. It's not supposed to be, again, Santa, gifts, all of that. It's really supposed to be more family connection, and people lose that. People want to shower everybody with so many gifts, and it's like, you're missing the point of it. Like, it's really about the appreciation and for me, the gratitude of the people that are around you. That's what it should be about. And we get most holidays kind of askewed, like, and I think all holidays, honestly. I just feel like it just becomes something different. Same thing with Easter. It's like we're chasing an Easter bunny. I'm like, that's not what Easter is about.
The message gets lost.
It gets lost. It gets lost. And so going back to your question about, Valentine's Day, it's like, for me, if you're in a new relationship, I don't feel, and I tell women this all the time, don't get into a relationship right before a holiday, because then you're not really sure exactly, like, if that person's just meeting you there for that holiday themselves because they're lonely. So I always discourage women from doing that. And I would discourage men too. But if you are with somebody you met them 2 months ago, keep it simple if you want to celebrate. Like for me and my partner, I think the one thing he loves about me is he was trying to frantically find somewhere to take me for dinner when we first got together. And we got together, you know, in July, but I was like, I don't do Valentine's Day. Like, I don't want to be around the crowds. It's not my personality. I'd rather cook dinner at home and just spend time together and watch a movie. Like, that's me. And so, you know, for Valentine's Day, we'll maybe go out to lunch if we have time during our schedules, but we keep it very simple because for me, it's about, you know, like it's a day to celebrate, but really it's a day I feel that was made for men, honestly, so that they're forced to say, okay, I've been doing all year. This is my one day to do something for the person I'm with. And so that's why I'm like, it's such a Hallmark holiday that I'm not a huge Valentine's Day person. I don't like roses. You know, he knows that about me. I'm not someone that's going to eat a box of chocolate. Like I'm not that person. So for me, it's like, you know, if you give me a nice card that says something sweet, that's great.
Yeah,
Hopefully they don't forget about the anniversary date also.
Well, anniversary is different. You better not forget that one.
Yeah, anniversary is a whole different ballgame, and you definitely got to remember that. Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, I'm glad we had this chance to get into a lighter conversation on a Friday, but there are some hard-hitting things going on in the world, and of course, we do have what's happening there in Ukraine. So if you can give us a little bit of what you're hearing lately from the front lines over there in Canada, as I know that you are keeping track of those kind of thoughts and issues going on, and definitely we hope that that war ends sooner versus later. And if you've got any thoughts around that China spy balloon, as I know that you have served in certain militaries and all in that nature, even though I don't know how much dealings you had with the Chinese when you were there and everything, but any thoughts around this supposed spy balloon that they're saying is not a spy balloon, but definitely any thoughts around those military issues, both in
Mark, what are the options? Someone's party's balloons got lost at the party? Hot air balloons?
Mark,
I want to say that they said it was like a civilian aircraft, but yeah, I'm not buying it either, but we'll be interested to see what folks' reactions are.
Mark, you know, your question is longer than my answer.
Well, just give a short answer.
Short answer. Okay, before I'll do my short answer, first of all, I would like to provide my comments on relationships and parenting.
Please.
And what you've just discussed.
Please.
I don't have such a rosy view on the both parenting and relationship. Number one, parenting. You are enjoying parenting 10 years from the moment the child was born until he's 10. Okay, I'll give you 12 years old. So whenever he's becoming teenager, he's becoming his own person, and you are becoming actually impediment. You are not helping him. You are just kind of a necessary evil, which is there, and he'll tolerate you simply because he cannot live on his own. He needs your place, a little bit of money, and all that stuff. So we're talking about maximum 12 years. That's it. The parenting is 0 to 12. After that, it's a lost cause, and you don't even have to fight it. You just let it go. Okay, the child will stay with you until he's 18 or whatever is legal age that he can go on his own, and you don't need to support him or so on. He's becoming his own separate person with his own views, including political views, economical views, and whatever other views he might have or may not have, and just let him go or her. That's it. That's the end of story. Number two, the relationship. I'll tell you that I'll try to word it correctly, but let me tell you that nothing beats highly paid and skillful call girls, and this is by far the best form of relationship. And she can, if she's really very skillful, she can be rough, she can be gentle, she can imitate whatever you want her to imitate, and this is by far the best. And if you try once this, you don't need any relationship, period. They're all digging for money. They want to take advantage of you one way or another, either being your lover or becoming your spouse or whatever. It's nothing but aggravation. And instead, you can pay a fraction of what your wife will take from you, and have a really good and meaningful, high quality time. That's my view on relationship. Okay. Okay. Now,
Nick, you're just in time.
no, listen. It's my view. It's not. It's not the network's view. That's for
No,
sure.
it's not. Like I said, that's Sasha's view and everything. Definitely want to get to Ukraine, but
Sasha, is that a take on your parents' relationship?
Sorry.
Good ask
once again?
Is that a critique of your parents' relationship also? That they were out like that too for each other?
It doesn't apply to me personally, simply because I'm married to a wonderful person for now 50 years. I have
Very fortunate.
fantastic daughter and two lovable grandchildren. On the other hand, I know what I'm talking about, and it's not it's not so simple, mind you. It's not.
And Nick may have some thoughts as well. Nick has been married there for a minute. Is very supportive of his wife and everything. So maybe he wants to jump in
You're in therapy today
as well, because we were talking about Valentine's Day, Stephanie.
Nick, you might want to lie down.
Wait. I'm an attorney. Can I plead the fifth or something?
Or you can
On this issue?
Yeah, you can plead the
You
fifth
can
if you
drink
want
a
to,
fifth.
yeah, just go ahead and play the fifth. But one of the things I was curious about is one of the other things that I definitely want to get back to the Ukraine and everything is that sometimes people are very much wanting to get gifts, wanting to get showered with gifts. And apparently, there's a whole country that's going to help people get those gifts, because apparently Hong Kong is going to give away 500,000 free airline tickets to lure back the tourists. So maybe that's what we got to do in order to get this love, is get one of these 500,000 airline tickets.
That's big. Are you serious?
Yes, they said that they are giving away 500,000 airline tickets as part of Hong Kong's $2 billion promotion campaign. So yes, they're giving away 500,000 free airline tickets.
I'm all over that, Mark. Okay, I mean, I'm there, buddy.
And Nick, don't get too excited. They're not first class.
Hong Kong, here we come. Let's get out the credit cards on to Hong
maybe
Kong.
you can get an upgrade.
All right, yeah. Oh, by the way, I checked the major news media, so the people on Pod TV around the world know what we're talking about here in the United States. All right, here's the reporting on the war in Ukraine, Sasha. 0 for today. So I guess the war is over, at least according to the United States. So
not necessarily so.
Well, over here we declared it. The news media in the United States declared the war over. So I guess
I don't know what media are you following. I'm following
ABC, CBS, and NBC.
Okay, I'm following a magazine by the
name
name Foreign Affairs, which is U.S. magazine, by the way. So it's part of U.S. media, but not one that most people listen to or read.
Sasha,
Yes.
Foreign Affairs, isn't that on Epstein's Island? It's a poor joke.
No, it's a
Well, maybe Stephanie knows about foreign affairs. She's an expert in relationships.
yeah.
Right?
Foreign
Tell
and
us
domestic.
about foreign affairs.
Okay, here's what
Go ahead.
is,
She is an expert. I'm telling you. Let's bring her on, baby. Foreign affairs. Let's hear it.
I don't know a lot about foreign affairs, to be honest with you. I know very little, to be honest with you. I am somebody who I watch some news. I'm somebody who I feel there's one view, there's another view, and then there's the truth, correct?
Yeah.
And I feel people get that skewed too much in this world about what that truth is. And you turn on one station, you turn on another station, and you're getting completely different facts. And so then you have to do your own fact check. And it's the same thing.
You brought that up because I've had a conversation with a couple of friends of mine, including some ladies and some gentlemen and everything. And one of the things that I know is going to frustrate the heck out of both, definitely Sasha, who has got definitely some interest in the Ukraine, having been born into that particular country, as well as Nick, who has definitely talked about the nature of media coverage. But there are a lot of folks that I think are like you, Stephanie. They are very frustrated by the news. I can tell you how many of my friends have told me I refuse to watch the news because all I hear is negative news, and I hear war and I hear other things. So they kind of have gotten this attitude of, I don't want to listen to the news because if what is being reported and all in that space. And I've heard that conversation from several people over the last several weeks and everything. But I just wanted
they're called high information voters, high knowledgeable voters. That's who they are. Oh, sorry, I didn't say anything.
I just feel like it's skewed. I mean, I know that there's tragedy that goes on in the world, and even with the George Floyd, that was horrible. I'm not going to say seeing somebody murdered on TV was okay. It was not. However, we forget, the past of people or the present of people. Or for me, it's like, and I know he's not Ted Bundy, but I'm saying it's like saying, oh, Ted Bundy just got killed, and now we're all upset because it was on video. But did we not also know that George Floyd was not the first person to die that way? There was somebody who was Asian that died that way. There was somebody who was white that died that way. But because there was no video of it at that time, then everybody's focusing on one thing and thinking that, every cop hates Black people. And I do not believe that. I do not believe that, cops should have their rights taken away to protect us. And they can't even go out when there's two girls who are about to stab each other, and they shoot one out of the two Black girls, and all of a sudden the cops are racist. It's like, seriously? Like,
even the Black cops are racist now.
Now the Black cops are racist, exactly. And they're there to protect people. I mean, the kids should have really, and this is my theory, when it comes to driving, for anybody who's getting their driver's test, before you can get their driver's test, it should be like, okay, when you get pulled over for a cop, what do? You put your hands on the wheel and you say nothing, or you have like a little pocket that has your license and your registration already there, so you can grab it, so there's no going into your glove compartment, nothing. That's going to cut down on a lot of these murders or kids taking off and fearing for their lives, and then stuff like this happening. Because we never look at the bigger picture of like cops' lives. How many cops have died since the George Floyd thing? But nobody looks at that. Nobody looks at the white guy that was walking his dog and got killed by some Black kids because he was white. Who cares? He's not Black. Black lives matter. And so for me, it's like, it's gotten too far for me as a Black woman. I'm like, this is going so far that it's separating the country. And I'm not okay with that.
Stephanie, when you were in school, did your teachers educate you about how to behave in the event a cop stops you? Did you get a lesson by your teachers?
No, I got a lesson by my father.
Okay.
I grew up in DeWitt, New York. So I grew up in a very Jewish area.
Are you in New York City? Is that where you're from?
No, I'm from upstate New York, DeWitt, New York. I live in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, Denver.
And I went to and I went to a cheer college in Boston, and then I went to Clark Atlanta University, which is an all Black college in Atlanta. And I took, Black history and all that other stuff. But yeah, like we did a march, for Rodney King. And I remember like it was a silent, peaceful march that we did. And then all of a sudden the looters came in, not from our college, and started, causing fires and tipping cars. And I remember having to jump in front of this woman's car. She was white. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, and I was trying to get her to get out of the situation. And then the cops came and, air gassed all of us, so it's just like, we weren't even the cause of it. And so it was one of those things where it's like, my dad was he helped to build 8 different youth centers around the world to get kids off the street. They're called the Martin Luther King Centers. He helped to raise money for that before he passed. He was a very passionate person, and he always believed in like, do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And so then when you do, and then you're like, why is our college getting, gassed, and it's during finals, it's like the cops are picking out the wrong people.
Right.
Since you said that, Stephanie, because a friend of mine is actually from the Denver area originally and all in that way. And I know that they talked about how they had a different experience depending on which school they went to there in Denver and everything. Because I think they went to the, at one time, the predominantly or one of the predominantly African-American schools, but then they went to the very largely majority European or European American school, and it got a lot of flack for even creating programs within that school around Black History Month and around things of that nature, even though they were just trying to bring awareness of their culture to the larger community and all in that space. But I just wanted your take on Denver. We oftentimes think of Denver as being a very liberal to some degree state, city, and definitely the state of Colorado as being very liberal, kind of like to some degree Wyoming is as well. But I just wanted your take, as we don't always have people from Colorado on.
Wyoming's not liberal. Colorado, Boulder is a communist state. But go on.
Yeah, Colorado way back when used to be a Republican state. Now it's definitely more a Democratic state. I'm neither nor. I listen to political views, and that's how I decide how I'm going to vote. I don't come in as one way. I study my stuff. I watch the debates. That's how I choose of what I think is right for the economy. However, going back, in general, when it comes to Black History Month, I've always felt way back when, because I went to an all-white high school, all-white middle school, there is not enough learning about anybody. I mean, you learn, okay, there's slavery, there's Martin Luther King. That's all you know. You don't even know the depths of slavery. You don't even know how the progression of Black people are and the things that they have discovered and the accomplishments they've made, which is beyond the ones that you hear, which is frustrating. And it's the same thing with Latinos and Asians. I mean, if we all had this all-encompassed book of what everybody has accomplished and struggled, and really, even what the Holocaust looks like and what Jewish people went through, it's like you just get these snippets, and then people think that they're greater than other people. And it's like, no, if you really look at what everybody's gone through, we're pretty all in an equal frame. Because even when people say Black people were the first enslaved, it's like, well, actually Native Americans were, and they didn't survive, and that's why they didn't stay slaves.
Actually, the
But
Hebrews were.
well, and the Hebrews were, yes. I mean, if you're going to go way back, but I'm saying when Black people compare themselves, I mean, it goes even back. I mean, Egyptians were slaves, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it goes way back. But when people are trying to compare it as of right now, I'm like, that's not true, people. Look at your history. If you're trying to compare, Black people, I'm like, first it was Indians compared to Black people. Yes, Jewish people were enslaved. Egyptians were enslaved. And we can go way back in history where we can see slavery. However, I just feel like our books aren't giving our children enough education to really grasp and then have that sympathy and that understanding of what everybody's been through.
Yeah,
Because
Stephanie,
we've all been through stuff.
you might agree with this. We are all children of God. No matter
Yeah.
what race, creed, color, doesn't matter. God created us all in his image and endowed us with inalienable rights. And that's, we are all master creations. We all have the unlimited potential because of the gifts of God. We're here on this earth to make choices and to choose right over wrong and to progress along. But ultimately, we all answer to our maker. And that's how it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dan, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know why. Some people have a fixation with the color of someone's skin when really everybody's a shade of something. And there's blacks from different countries, whites from different countries, or everything in between. Nobody is pure white or black or what have you. And
but part of that is also what goes on. And I don't know if Stephanie's got any thoughts about it, but there is also, and I know that Shaquille has teased me about this when I brought it up, but colorism is a very real thing. There is differentiations even among the ethnicities and all in that space, because definitely there was a time that lighter skinned African Americans like myself were seen in a better light than others and all in that space. But I'd love to hear Stephanie's talks around that. When I have brought up colorism before, there have been people on this panel that have actually thought that I was speaking out of turn or not bringing up something that was a realism, even though I think
that's real. That's real because, as they would have said, if I was back in the slavery times, I would have been more in the house, right? Versus out in the field because I'm light skinned. And, when I walk into a store with my white friends way back when, I was treated differently based on my skin color. And so, just that assumption. And again, I don't feel like it's systemic racism. I don't feel like we're going back. We're not in chains. I don't even like when people say that. I think that's, again, is just separating us as Americans and as humans in general. However, I also can understand the color thing. At the same time, when people say I don't see color, I'm like, that's BS. We all see color. It's how you react when you see that color. Because you can stand, my friend is Indian, and she, after, that 9/11 happened, somebody tried to push her down, and she's like, what are you even talking about? I'm not from Sin. I'm not from any of this. Like, I'm not, this is not who I'm from. Like, and you're assuming by my skin color that you should be afraid of me. And again, it's like how we react when we see somebody's skin color.
But that's out of ignorance, though, is it not?
That is out of ignorance. And it's also ignorant to say, I don't see color. I mean, come on now. We all see color.
Well, we all see color, just like we see eye color and hair color. But most people don't react to eye color and hair color. Why do they react to skin color? Like Japanese or Chinese, I mean, are they white? Are they black? Are they persons of color? Like Harvard College wants to discriminate against them because they're white-ish. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. Because I don't, again, it's about what are you seeing in front of you? Because really it's about a person. You can have a white person too, like Ted Bundy, who's a serial killer, right? And then you can also have somebody who's black that does something wrong. I mean, it's just the nature of the person. You know, God created us all to be different. And some of us are created to be evil. It doesn't matter what skin color you are. And some of us, most of us, are not created to be evil, you know, and some of it is all, you know, where you live and how you're raised and how you choose to, you know, that decision of, do I choose to be in a gang or do I choose to not be in a gang? I mean, we all have choices in this world. Some don't. I agree with that. You know, some are put in this situation where it's like there's a gun to your head and you're either going to be in this gang or you die. I feel bad for those people. But at the end of the day, we do have a choice.
But along those same lines, and I know we talked about it on the news show before, we talked about it on a lot of our different shows, how much of that need to belong is the reason that a lot of our kids get involved in gangs. Because my brother's actually worked with at-risk youth, and I know a lot of times why they are getting involved is because one is the kind of a sense of what they can get in the sense of a quick return. Sometimes they don't always think about the danger involved with that quick return, because you can make some very high money. I mean, of course, you might wind up in prison. A good chance you will end up in prison, and you might wind up dead, which is a very much of a consequence and all in that space. But a lot of times people aren't thinking about that. And every time that I have heard my brother and other people that have been in that space talk about it, it's about being accepted into some sort of society when you're not being accepted by others. To Lee's point earlier, that there are a lot of children that are not having guidance at their home. But I was just wondering your take on that as a stepmom.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, I have to disagree with the fact that after 10, you don't parent. Parenting is very different now. What kids go through in high school is so different than what I went through in high school. There's more pressure with teenagers to be in this group or that group. When I went to school, I was with the same people from elementary, middle school, and high school. There is no, once you get after middle school, you get to choose what high school you're going to go to. You're split up from most of your friends. You're meeting new people. You're trying to fit in. And some of the ways of fitting in is not okay. I mean, kids are doing drugs way earlier than when I grew up. You know, kids are exploring things differently. I mean, we have to constantly have a talk with, you know, our 16-year-old and say, listen, do not smoke anything, take anything, because you don't know, you know, what's in it. You don't know if you're going to die tomorrow. Like, and you have to understand also with kids, the suicide rate is higher now. So to say you're going to disconnect as a parent when the child turns 10, that's not realistic, at least not here in Denver, Colorado, or in most states in the United States, because kids are committing suicide over things about being teased. There's, you know, everybody has cell phones, they do videos. I mean, they exploit people to such a high degree that's so hurtful. And what you go through as a teenager now is so different, because the technology is making it a lot harder on kids to just be able to just say, okay, you're 10, now you can freely do whatever. Not in this household, because we've had to go through a lot of stuff. And I'm so blessed because, you know, Bruno is an amazing kid, but he's an amazing kid because I check in. I don't check out with him. And that's how he's able to. I mean, our whole thing is we have huge communication. We talk about everything. There's nothing off the table in this house because there's no judgment. Go ahead.
My oldest is 45, and we is still parenting. Not telling him what to do, but he calls me for advice.
Yeah.
And you know, we try to have a relationship that's respectful, open, so we can share ideas and views and that kind of thing. But when they become an adult, they become more like your friend, and less like your frenemy. You know? Yeah, and they go through that age of irrationality, which Sasha's talking about, where they really think you're stupid, you don't know anything, and they go crazy with hormones and all that. That's to be expected. I've had it with every kid. I've learned that that's just part of the process. We've got a 15-year-old granddaughter that I adopted now. She's autistic, and so we have some special challenges. But she is such a good girl, and she requires a lot of gentle parenting because of her disability. But she tries so dang hard. I'm so proud of her. but you just have to be there for your kids. I mean, whether
You simply got to
you
be
know,
there for the kids and everything. Speaking of being there for the kids and everything, sometimes, and I'm going to shift the topic just slightly and everything, but sometimes there are countries that like to be parents as well. So apparently, and I know that I'm going to maybe bring another thing up to tease one of our analysts that isn't here and everything, but I know that Chris Greco is not the biggest fan of the French, but the French have warned Netanyahu over the judicial overhaul and the settlement. So he's over there trying to tell the folks in Israel what to do. And apparently the U.S. is expanding its presence into the Philippines, and China is angered over that. So apparently there's some folks in the different parts of the world that are angered over decisions made by one country or another. But I didn't know if anybody that is following the politics of the world had any thoughts on either of those, because apparently the U.S. is expanding its presence back in the Philippines, and they're saying that they're doing that to counteract China and the Chinese aggression.
They're doing it at the invitation of the Filipino government because the Philippines are in a bit of a bind there, where they're so close to China, and China is expanding into the South Sea and all of that, and they're seeing China as more of a threat. They were kind of cozying up to them for a while, but there's a danger in that. So you have to kind of pick your poison, right? The United States liberated the Philippines and has always been a friend. We've had some serious issues with them in the past decade because of leadership and that kind of thing. And because we don't have the best record of not butting out of people's business and not exploiting people and resources and other things. And so, we need to do a better job of working with different countries, not seen it as an exploitive partner. China is very exploitive. They go in and they rip the resources out of the land. They treat the workforce horribly. And they don't seem to honor the rule of the law in those countries at all, because once they're there, they're sort of they're rule unto themselves, and because they don't believe anybody else can tell them what to do, and that's the kind of the problem. There's a lot of U.S. companies that are that way too, which is the epitome of arrogance and stupidity in my mind, because those relationships have to be balanced and fair.
Dan, but you must admit that China is very skillful in using soft power. For example, in Africa, what they're doing, they're building schools, they're building hospitals, they're building all kind of things, and there are courses for people to learn Chinese, and Chinese slowly becomes the most used language in Africa. So if you ever travel there, and there
Sasha, it's not just Africa. There are Mandarin schools here in the United States that you can learn Mandarin if you can get into those schools. I think that they are usually more geared toward the Asian population and particularly the Chinese population, but there are definitely schools even in the local area.
You're absolutely right. Except the Chinese are there.
Big presence in U.S. universities.
They're right there for Africans. They're very affordable. They all have good locations, good teachers, and their courses are to blend whatever local languages in Africa people may use, like Swahili and maybe some others. They adopt that very skillfully and bring them into Chinese. So the most spoken language in Africa very soon will be Chinese, not English. And Russians are not doing the same thing. Russians, it's a very brutal approach. They're just trying to grab whatever they can.
Russian, right?
Yeah.
But Sasha, which of the Chinese languages are we going to be speaking? Because there's not just one Chinese language. There's Mandarin, there's Cantonese, there's about 5 or 6 different languages within China and everything. Because I hear you saying speaking Chinese, and there's not just one Chinese language.
You can choose one, whatever you like to learn, and they provide all teachers in all Chinese languages. Nothing to worry about.
So I get to pick which one I want and all in that space. Well, we can ready to wind down and everything, but definitely, I know you've got your show around the Ukraine that'll be coming up at the 11 o'clock hour. So folks will be interested in that. And of course, we do have the chess show that'll be coming on in the sense of being aired on tomorrow, even though we might do a pre-record later on. Actually, we will be doing a pre-record later today and everything. And the thing that I was going to tease Chris about if he had been here, but I'll just mention it and hopefully he'll pop in and everything. But there was a hitman that was found working as a pizza chef there in France. And apparently he's been on the run for 16 years and all in that space. And he was actually found after they had been looking for him for all of those decades. And guess what, folks? Guess what his last name is? Maybe they're related. We'll have to find out and all in that space. Because when I looked at him going like, wait a minute, there was a Greco that was found and all in that space. Hopefully they're not related, or maybe they're just distant cousins or something like that. But I did see that they found him.
Probably
and he did
not.
have literally the same last name, but hopefully they're just distant cousins and all into that kind of space. They're not related.
Yeah, Mark, what is his first name? Because Chris has been gone for a few days.
Yeah, I don't
they
know.
say his first name is Edgardo.
Ago.
Hey, no, Mark.
But I'm telling you, dude, if you look at the
You have
picture,
the same
he does
last
look
name
very
as
much
Josh
like Chris
Dooley. Are
and
you
everything.
related?
So look on the news, on Google News, and they might have some family resemblance and everything. So who knows? Maybe that's why he's been gone for a few days, and we'll find that out much later and all in that space. But definitely just giving him a hard time, because actually I did get a text from him earlier, so I know that is not him, because I got a text earlier and it was not from the prison itself. So the text was actually from a more reasonable location and all in that space. Stephanie, it's been great having you on this particular day, kind of breaking the hard-hitting news that we usually have, but still having some fun conversation and some important conversation. So before we get on out of here, and we've got about a few more minutes, if you will tell folks how they can reach you, this book that you've got, and any last words that you would like to share. I'm sure that me and the rest of the panelists would love to hear that.
So you can reach me either on my website, miss-adventures.com. I'm also on Instagram under miss_adventures_coach. You can buy my book on either, if you're a book seller. So for instance, Barnes & Noble's here in Denver, Colorado is going to carry my book, doing a book signing, and there's several stores around Denver, Colorado that are carrying my book, but I am registered on Ingram Sparks. Also, you can find my book on Amazon. Again, this is what it looks like. It made #1 bestseller. And then just to wrap it up, I just feel as long as anybody's keeping their heart open, there's love for everybody. And I truly believe that, because, I've dated more than 99 types of guys. There's a second book that's coming out next year, but it's about, you might have to go on those coffee dates and figure it out, but also take that time to really figure out you, because, at the end of the day, if you don't even love yourself, nobody else is going to. You can't be searching for somebody in order to make yourself happy. You need to be happy before you find that person. So
Definitely
that's my
appreciate
tidbit.
Appreciate that, Ms. Bailey, and everything. Any final thoughts that the rest of the panel have? We still got about another minute and a half to go and everything, but any final thoughts you've got, Lee and or Dan? Otherwise, we'll get ready to get on out of here.
I just wanted to add to what Stephanie was saying about marrying people to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the purpose of marriage, and more often than not, you don't.
Yeah, I agree. That's the best way to be in a failed marriage.
Well, that's the first thing my wife did when we got married. She had me get fixed.
Did it work, Dan?
I don't know. I don't think it was a problem, actually.
Jury's still out.
The jury's still out on Dan as to whether it worked or not, and I'm sure that even Dan's wife might still think that it is a work in progress, as the old saying goes. So it might be a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, I don't know about you, but in New York City, it's supposed to go in single digits tonight.
It's supposed to be getting a little bit chilly here. We've got down into the 30s. I think it's supposed to get down a little bit colder down here in North Carolina, but they're used to that over there in Denver. They probably already had about several snows and all into that space.
Yep. It snows and then it's warm, and then it snows and then it's warm. We don't get hard, winters like I used to do within upstate New York, because we have the full 4 seasons. We don't. I mean, unless you're in the mountains, you don't get the full 4 seasons.
It's beautiful there. I live in Utah. You actually get the used snow. We get it first. You get the used snow. It explains why our skiing is much better.
Ooh. Well, I'm not a skier, so or a snowboarder.
I like the kid.
And when you say used snow, I hope you're not referring to the color.
No, it's well, I don't know. I assume that going over the mountains and stuff purifies what the remaining snow is,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So it's clean, supposedly clean snow. Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're going to get on out of here. Now, there's no snow in the forecast that I'm aware of for North Carolina, and I'm not a big fan of the snow because many years ago there was an ice storm, not a snowstorm, and that's actually where I had one of my few injuries and visits to the hospital because I fell down and broke the lovely arm and all in that space. But like I said, that was about a decade or so ago. But it's not fun to falling on ice and then falling on asphalt and then finding something go crack,
No.
because that is literally what happened. But
That
on
hurts.
that note, we're going to get on out of here, and we will bring back more news stories on next week and everything. And Miss Bailey, you're always welcome to come back to share
I would
items
love
about
to.
the book and any other things that you want to share in general. And if you've got friends in Denver, I actually met the gentleman that's running for the mayor of Denver when he came to speak in Durham not that long ago. So I'm hoping that he's going to come on one of our shows, because I know he's very much into the anti-gang kind of activities and all in that space. So definitely hoping to bring him on in the near future. So we might have some other people coming from Denver as well.
Nice. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Nice to meet you. Y'all have a good weekend.
Do the
Nice to
same.
meet
God bless.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bless.
Bye bye.